Hi everyone, thanks so much for joining us. I'm McJilton.
And I'm Bryce Oselen.
And we're here with Chancellor Donde Plowman. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Hey, thanks for inviting me. Happy to be here.
Yeah, so the first thing that we want to talk about right off the bat is this past year in COVID-19. You don't really plan for a pandemic, right? So kind of tell me about how leadership has been overall for this past year.
So I'll tell you, the first interesting thing about it is that my predecessor, Jimmy Cheek, actually had the foresight 10 years ago to hire an emergency operations manager who's been waiting for 10 years, planning and planning and planning. And I'm kind of joking, but kind of not. Brian Gard, he's done a fantastic job in helping us get an emergency operation set up. Because in an emergency, you can't use the normal chains of command. It'll take too long. So we've just got this group. We're like, moving like this. But he was not trained for an emergency that would last a year. So we've had to adapt along the way. And I've gotten to know people, spent more time with the leaders of this campus than I would have. It would have taken me 10 years. So there's been some really good parts to this as far as the leadership goes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
How has UT continued to serve the community throughout this pandemic?
So that's been another blessing, actually. We've really had to partner, for example, with the County Department of Health. So our Health Center Director, Spencer Gregg, he's been on the phone with them probably 3, 4, 5 times a day in the heat of it last fall especially. So for example, everything, the local health boards kind of have the authority over what we do. So we would say, how do you feel about this meal plan? Or here's a Greek house, their kitchen is here, they eat here, they've had one positive case, does it make it a cluster? So we've just been in such close contact. And I've been part of another group of community leaders who come together, both mayors, former governor Randy Boyd, head of the Urban League, Phyllis Nichols, to talk every month about what do we need to be worrying about as a community, what do we need to be doing. Now it's vaccination time, so we're trying to encourage people to get the vaccine. So it's just, in a way, we have come together as a community, because when there's a crisis, that's what you do. So that's been a benefit of it. I've gotten to know a lot more about the fort. You might have heard about that. Actually, and seeing where our students live and what opportunities there are for us over there, working with the people who own homes there and own homes that our students live in. So all that has been a benefit from it.
So moving forward, we're talking about, you just announced everything is pretty much going to be happening in person in the fall. Classes and events.
Correct.
Tell me a little bit about how that's going to look for the fall.
So as we anticipate, as the numbers are going down, as the vaccinations, or even when I announced that, the vaccinations today we know are going to be more available than when I announced that. So everyone who wants a vaccination should have had it by then. So it's going to feel like a normal campus. Having said that, I think some things we've learned during COVID, there's some pieces to Zoom that we're probably going to stay with us. I think some students have told us they like the flexibility of some courses online, like maybe 1 out of 5 or something like that. So we're working right now to try to figure out what is it students want, and that's what we want to provide. But we're going to be back at full capacity, but taking with us everything we've learned during this. So some of the things about Zoom, I have used it to stay in touch with donors and alums. I'll probably continue to do that. It won't replace driving to Nashville to meet with people, but I'll be able to get more done. It's efficient, in that regard.
Definitely.
So students can expect we're back to normal. Well, that's not a good expression. We're back to a residential campus where everybody's in class, doing things in groups and organizations like you used to do.
One step closer to normal.
That's right, yeah.
That's for sure.
As the chancellor, you make a lot of important decisions. So how do you personally deal with individuals who may not agree with the decisions that you make?
Well, I try not to cry too badly when they call me out on social media. If you put yourself out there on social media, people are going to criticize you. But seriously, I don't make any decisions that some group's not going to be happy, unhappy with. And so that's why it's so important just to know, be really clear on what our values are, and try to always do the right thing, because no matter what you do, somebody's going to be upset. At the beginning of COVID, we came out and we said there's 3 values, and we did this to help decision making. So we said, be creative, be compassionate, and be flexible. And if you do those 3 things, I'm not really going to criticize the decision that anybody's made. And I've seen people doing that, and I want those 3 values to go with us post-COVID. They're pretty good values anyway. And universities learning to be more flexible, that's a good thing. Be compassionate, be creative. And so the compassionate part's been really important, because throughout this, lots of people who work here have young children at home. It's been heavy burden has been placed on women during COVID. Young children who all of a sudden school says, nope, they're home. They're home this week, next week, next week. That's a burden on families. And so we have said to everybody on this campus, you don't think about this so much because you're as a student, but there's a lot of people who work here, 1,600 employees, who, more than that, but 1,600 faculty members and about 6,000 employees who have to work this out. So we said, be creative, be compassionate, and be flexible. And that's never a bad thing. If we do that, we'll make good decisions. So that's been a part of it. And then being willing the next day to say, okay, we learned more about COVID today than we knew yesterday. We're going to have to adjust what we did yesterday. So we've adapted along the way. And I'm comfortable with that. I don't think it means that because I know we put the best thought into each decision, but we've all been as a team willing to revisit any decision we make.
So I want to backtrack a little bit. So you talked about Zoom and how that's become such a big part of our lives over this past year. And we've realized that it's a lot more efficient for some things, like you said, like you don't have to travel.
Right.
It just saves a lot of time.
Right.
Some students have really adjusted to virtual learning, and they realized, I like this better. It works for my lifestyle better. Maybe from now on, I needed to take virtual classes. So moving forward for the university, do you think you guys will offer a larger selection of virtual classes versus only in-person classes?
We'll offer a larger selection than we were before, because before it was almost zero. Not quite, but it was we went from, I think, 24,000 credit hours last spring to 380,000 in 10 days notice.
Wow.
But we want to offer it in a way that is strategic and makes sense. So if it's so part of what we're going to be doing is surveying students and finding out which are those courses are they interested in. So for example, is it, well, if I have an 8 a.m. class, I'd rather take it on Zoom? Or is it this type of class, like math, I do better in the classroom? So we're going to be looking at all of that. And what I don't want us to go back to is a schedule of classes that's just there, as opposed to intentionally there. These type of, the majority of it will be face-to-face, because that is what the majority of students want. But even when you talk about online, there's Zoom, and then there's asynchronous, which means you don't have to show up at a specific time. You have to do a set of assignments. Some students really like the asynchronous. Now that takes a lot of self-discipline, because you can go, I'm too tired to do it today. I'll do it tomorrow. And tomorrow you're like, I'm too tired. And then pretty soon you're behind. But some students do really well with that. And for example, I was just talking to Danny White, the director of athletics, saying there are sometimes it would be helpful to athletes if when they have to travel, like look at this season right now.
Sure.
We've got basketball players that are in Indianapolis, and our women are going to be in San Antonio. I'm sure many of them are going to be on their computers zooming in, because that's what they're mostly doing. Well, maybe when things are back to normal, that should still be an option. So things like that we're going to be looking at. But we want to do it intentionally, not just because somebody said, well, I think I'll just do it this way.
Sure.
Yeah.
So the big question, graduation. I know it's a big topic right now. Exciting for a lot of us.
Are you graduating?
Yes, I am.
Are you graduating?
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
So, are you happy about this?
Yes. Very excited. I texted my parents right away after you had posted that video on social media, and I said, I guess graduating in a pandemic isn't so bad after all. But last week I actually got to sit down with Beth Gladden and talk in detail about the plans for graduation in Neyland and how all the ceremonies are going to be, everything being safe during COVID and stuff, even if people are vaccinated.
Right.
in the future, do you see graduation moving permanently from Thompson Bowling to Neyland instead?
Well, I don't know. That's a big question that people are asking. I think we need to see how it goes and see what the feedback from students is and from faculty. In the past, you recall that the May ceremony has been a more decentralized ceremony, kind of by college. So doing it in Neyland doesn't really allow for that so much. So we'll have to see how it goes. But I'm really excited about it. I'm so happy that we can do it and feel safe and comfortable.
Yes.
Kind of no matter what happens. Now, as soon as they told me this was their plan, I said, what's our backup for rain? And you know what their answer was? Umbrella.
Yep. That's exactly what I asked Beth, and she said, you know what, we're going to make it happen for these graduates, rain or shine.
Yeah, I'm excited. There are schools all around the country who do it outside and who have for years. It's a big thing. So we'll see how it goes, and we'll get feedback and adjust our plans going forward based on that. But I'm so happy. The reaction to that video, initially I told some of the people on my team I wasn't sure about that video. It seemed kind of crazy, and then the reaction was so positive, and students are pumped up, I think, really, and I'm excited myself. So it's going to be great.
It is.
Yeah.
Definitely a moment that once you get all that positive feedback, you really love your job.
Yeah.
You're like,
now,
this
the
is
day
awesome.
we were over there filming it, it was so windy. So I'm hoping that day y'all aren't just blown away when you're walking across the stage. So
get some safety pins to pin your cap on.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah.
Well, that's all we have for you guys today. Thank you so much for joining us, Chancellor.
Thank you.